Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the virtual Cobalt Cafe. My name is Rick Lupert. I am your MC for tonight's reading for our weekly series tonight, in addition to our open reading. And it is, by the way, week number 244 of our weekly open reading every single week, except for the ones we skipped, but don't think about those. Week number 244. Otherwise, tonight, in addition to our open reading, Ted Burke is our featured reader. Ted, really happy to have you with us. It's going to be a great reading. So looking forward to it. We're going to do a little bit of our open reading first, as we usually do, and then we will get to Ted and then the rest of the open reading. If you have not already sent me a message in the chat letting me know that you would like to read or spoken out loud earlier and been confirmed in some way, if you would like to read, that's what you should do, like Ken Scott just did. So Ken, I've added you to the list. When you're on the list, we will you get to read up to 2 poems maximum. Less is more is the suggested time limit. As always, take that seriously, folks. And there you go. That's how it's going to work. We have a 1 drink minimum at the Cobalt, as we usually do. I'm drinking an extra añejo tequila tonight, in case anyone is curious about that. And there you go. Do that. Finally, you should have the chat room open. The chat room is available for you to interact with each other during the reading, since everyone is muted, and that's just the available method of communicating that we have to protect everyone's interests. There you go. I think that's everything I need to tell you before we get going with the reading, and our first reader, who will be Richard Loringer. I'd like to ask if there are any questions. Yes, Martin Parker.
Good evening, Rick. I was just wondering what, if anything, the term minimal pair means to you.
Minimal pair. It would be you'd get it from a minimal pear orchard. It's smaller trees. Usually is tasty. You have to let them steep on the tree a little bit longer for them to really get juicy. They're a little bit more solid than the larger full-size pears. Sometimes a full-size pear will identify as a minimal pear, which is now illegal to do in the United States, but it does it anyway, and I think it's our job to support it.
Cool. We might find about another meaning for that term later on.
Interesting foreshadowing, Martin. Looking forward to it. Good question. Any other questions before we get going? Chris, yes.
I'm taking my Cathabella role seriously tonight. So what is an example of some of the craziest March Madness that you've run across, Rick Lupert?
The craziest March Madness that I have come across. That's a good question. I'm thinking of some crazy things that might have happened in March. Well, March is, at least this year, is the month that the Jewish holiday of Purim occurs in, and that's a holiday where you're supposed to get to a state where you have a difficult time telling the difference between good and evil.
Ooh.
So the idea there being, not so you become evil, but you realize how easy it is to, jump that line. But at synagogues and things like that, what will happen is people will dress up real crazy and drink a lot during the festivities. I myself, last week, was a Viking in an inflatable Viking costume, and I didn't realize that I'd purchased a female Viking costume, so I had breasts as well that I don't normally have, and that's fine. Everyone was fine with it.
Yeah, well, my half of my ancestors come from Sweden, so I'm sure they would have appreciated that.
Very good. All right, good question, Chris, and thank you for helping fill the role that Cathabella has when she's here and asking a question. Looking forward to seeing what that was all about when you guys read. Any other questions before we get going? All right, well, it looks like we are ready to get going then. We will say that on deck is Christopher Bogart, and please welcome our first reader, Richard Loringer. Hello, Richard.
Hi. I hope. Yeah, I was going to do some politics tonight. Is it okay to start with politics, or will that like freak everybody out? Okay, well, it freaks us out every day anyway. And I'm actually going to read some prose prose. That's part of my last podcast and I usually don't do this, but I really like this bit, and there's a little thing about the podcast. And my podcasts are not all political, but lately it's sort of been coming up in them. This one has a theme of masks. It's called That Man Behind the Curtain, and it starts out talking about Wizard of Oz and masks in second wave feminism and masks throughout history, the Ku Klux Klan, cyber criminals, a bunch of stuff, and eventually gets around to talking about our favorite nihilistic criminals, the two perps in chief. And that's what this section is about, where I accidentally explain all of current politics. So here, I'm reading a little quickly. Oh, and the names have been changed to satirize the guilty. First and most obvious, Littlefingers grins through a mask of woven lies at all times. Seemingly always has, regardless of whether he's able to recognize that or not. At the same time, he purports to be ripping the masks off of his opponents, i.e. anyone who doesn't kiss his stinky pinky toes, which is projection at its shiniest, finest. Meanwhile, Mosquito stands close behind, puppeteering or penetrating, it's hard to tell. His language seems to have degenerated into a ketamine babble, but no matter, he's a man of action, always has been. What his actions are and the purposes thereof are masked in shadow for the purposes of obfuscation. I'm not going to sit here and say these are attempts to weaken the federal government. I'll leave you to parse that out on your own. But I am going to pose perhaps the most tedious and overasked question. Yay, why do this? But I'm not thinking of their goals or end games. I'm seeing it as an inquiry into what causes them to do this. What drives this endless and increasingly destructive behavior? I know. How can I possibly know that, and how could anyone? Well, I'm going to posit just one approach to an answer, part of an answer that makes both common and scientific sense based on facts we do know. First, let's take a half step back and start by looking at another salient feature of Droopy's public persona, i.e. his creation and fostering of the maggots. What's remarkable is how well he sustains their anger and sense of victimhood, although it's not that hard really, because those feelings create the neurotransmitter known as dopamine, and lots of it. Every time they feel that disdain, that frustration, that rage and hatred, every time they have thoughts of violence or enact it, they get a big jolt of that shit, and it feels good. And goddamn does the brain want more. And that, my friends, is called conflict addiction, which I've spoken of before. It's not only self-sustaining. Like any addiction, it grows because the nature of dopamine is to make you want more and more of whatever starts it squirting in the first place. It's part of the evolutionary development of the brain, and it's not going anywhere. It's especially easy for Dump to stir up a predilection for conflict because he clearly has the same addiction and has fostered it beautifully over the years. I suspect it's a different case with our musky boy from Brazil, despite his predilection for that strange Levian salute, which I don't think he put out there to create conflict, but to assert power. But Mump and Dusk clearly do have a big commonality, namely an addiction to accruing, you guessed it, wealth and power. Don't kid yourself, it's absolutely an addiction. It works neurologically in exactly the same way as fucking crack, except much, much stronger. And the more you indulge, the more that's the only thing you want to do. It all comes down to irrepressible urge. I mean, look at these guys. They've got dopamine leaking from the eyes. I suspect it might be the only neurotransmitter left in their brains. Their midbrains are flooded with heavenly voices singing, "Get more now." And their frontal cortex is on fire, devising more and more ways to get, well, more and more. That's the end in all of it, the getting. And on top of that, they've been each at this a long time, and they've got tons of strategies to mask their real motivations, because that's what addicts do. Have you ever known anyone with a bad addiction, especially one that changes their behavior, body, how their brain works, like opioids, crystal meth, or gambling? Hopefully you haven't, but so many have. And if left unchecked, what do they become? How heart-wrenching is it to watch a friend or loved one slowly become detached, disengaged, dissociated from everything else until their every action, every motivation is focused on one thing: to score. There's an interesting word. How many of them have turned to theft, self-harm, assault, or worse behaviors, which have been unthinkable scant years prior? And why does this happen? Because addiction is a disease. So here we have a whole mess of people, emphasis on mess, who are running and leading this country and who are diseased, who are in the throes and thrall of a severe disease that controls their behavior and disconnects them from any sense of values or value, unfortunately, including the value of human life and life in general, which is exactly the same with all corporations and their investors. Turns out Plato was right with his whole philosopher king thing. The only person fit to lead, to rule, is one who doesn't want to. How's that for an answer based on facts? That's all I got for you. Hope that wasn't too much. Oh, what a lovely way to start. Anyway, that's my last podcast if you want to check it out.
Is everything okay over there, Richard? There was a reaction right at the end where you seemed frightened. I just want to make sure that
I'm always frightened. Yeah. I'm practicing.
Good. Thank you for that. All is welcome to open this event and potentially create a theme. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being here. As always, round of applause for Richard Loringer. On deck are Chris and Jackie. I don't know if Jackie's actually here. Chris, so it may be all you for that matter. But so you for sure are on deck, and we'll see what happens if Jackie shows up. Please welcome now Christopher Bogart. Hello, Christopher.
Hi. I would like to first of all make an announcement that there are 4 of us in this room that are presently in this book I am about to show you if I can. Yeah, if you can turn on the share button. Yep. It now has 330 pages and 75 poets. So, and it's going to go to press as of probably the first day of April. So we should have it by the middle of April sometime. 5 more days. If anybody wants to participate, I will put in the chat what you have to do. The poems have to be about what Mr. Loringer so eloquently was speaking of. And that's what it's about. At any event, I'm going to read 2 poems. One of them is called, is from this book, which is a book that I wrote, a poetry about the trials of Central Americans and South Americans who come north and why they come north. I have a quote to begin this. A voice is heard in Ramah, mourning and great weeping, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. And it's from Jeremiah 31:15. This is really what happened in one town when a drug cartel came into the town. It's called the Pile. The pile has been placed in the dead of night in the center of the village square. The pile had the shape of a pyramid, a ziggurat, a Mayan temple dedicated to some bloodthirsty god. Stray dogs circled the pile, sniffed curiously, pulling at its parts, trying to tear it to the ground. Goats bleated, sounding so much like the cry of human children. Give the canine explorers a wide berth. Stunned townsfolk stood mute, frozen, as they stared at the square, their fear palpable, presence in the hot, still air. The sun beat down on the pile of limbs and torsos and severed heads, the rotting flesh of 7 little children. 5 decayed young babes, relentless reminders of the penalty for failure to cooperate. And the second poem I'd like to do is, I'd like to show you this, and this is going to be in the book. And it's called The Statue of Griftery. And for those of you that don't remember, the new Colossus is written at the base of the statue. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shores, send these the hopeless tempest tossed to me. I light my lamp beside the golden door. This, however, is called the Statue of Griftery. And it's based on Donald Trump saying, we're going to be selling a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on the card of about 5 million, and that's going to give green card privileges, plus it's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. So I decided to recreate the Statue of Liberty. And the new Colossus is now the new Onassis. And it says, give me your greedy, your filthy rich, your mega moguls seeking life tax-free, your con artists, your masters of the golden grift. Send these, whose luggage sports the double G. Show me the gold, and I will be your bitch. Thank you.
Whew, good one, Christopher. Well done. Preach, as it were. Really, I don't know if enjoyed that is the right word, but that really resonated with me. Well done. Thank you for that. Thank you for your work on this anthology. Exciting that we've got a publication date. Looking forward to seeing it. Glad to be in it. Round of applause to you, Christopher, for your reading tonight and all this work that you're doing. On deck, Martin Parker, please welcome now Chris. And I misspoke earlier when I was saying Jackie, I meant Siggy. You guys all are so entwined with each other, so forgive my error, but please welcome Chris and Siggy.
Okay, in the role of Cathabella, okay. I can't do the role of Cathabella and Rick mutually, so there'll be no shakuhachi music today. Okay, the title is March Madness, or How Can We Keep Them Down on the Farm? Siggy, start. You have it there, right, on your... Siggy?
Excuse me?
Don't you have it in your messenger?
Oh, you need me to find my copy?
Yeah, it's
Just a second.
It's in messenger
Whoops.
from Cathabella.
Oh dear. I'm
Should I
trying to
read the
look like I know what
first
I'm
one?
doing. I'm here. Hold on.
Should be in messenger from Cathabella.
Just a second. Give me one 4-letter word.
Unfortunately, Siggy's starting, so I can read the first one if you want.
Well, what I did was I made my link to here without and put it over what I was.
Okay, well, I guess it's just
our Match Madness. There we go. I got it.
Okay, go. A surprise.
Now I can't hear you. Hold on.
Go, Siggy.
Okay.
You go. You start with a surprise.
Yes, I do.
Okay, go.
March Madness, or how can you keep them down on the farm? A surprise in the garden. A tomato, heart-shaped, plump, ripe, and deep red. So gorgeous, couldn't eat it.
In a box from across the ocean in Alberta, Crimson red tomatoes still on the vine. Next is Cathabella's. Oh, come on. Uncle's farm. Come on. Cows as crazy as March hares, running through the cornfields, then down the road. Auntie yelling after my cash. My cash!
A farmer's herd next to the road to town, cute and adorable. Thick, shaggy hair covers their eyes, long curled horns, photogenic.
A harpsichord builder working in the barn steps out to greet the goat gone mad as a March hare hoofs on his shoulders. Cathabella.
Want me to read, Jackie?
Go ahead. This
No
is
need for the month of March to have madness, though I hear a hint of it in the raven's croak. A farmer's herd next to the road to town. I think I've read this before. Cute and adorable. Thick, shaggy hair covers eyes, long curled horns, photogenic.
sparkly red shoes. He called me a hot tomato with a ponytail and top hat, silly as a March hare. Cathabella.
In a field down East Main, stop driving. In the field, a herd grazing, black and white Oreo cows.
First honeymoon, 6 months pregnant, also known as March Madness. We only stopped driving to look at the cows. Cathabella. Okay, that's it.
And that's it.
March Madness.
Well, my God, I don't know what to do with myself if I can't give Rick a hard time about his shakuhachi at the end of this. But nice job, Chris and Siggy, pulling it together with the other folks not around tonight. Glad to have the collab represented. And,
have you ever seen an Oreo cow? You know
About
what it
the
is?
Galway.
Only the center. I think they'd removed the cookie part.
The cookie parts are on both sides. The center is white. Imagine a cow that's, black and white, black, white, black.
I don't know that I've seen such a cow, but I'd like to very much.
Me too. I've
They
only
also
seen a
are
photo.
white, black, white.
No, they haven't
You
done
got me thinking. I'm editing my book of poems that I wrote in Alaska last summer, and a whole lot of the work towards the end is pining to see animals somewhere in Alaska. So now I have to add Oreo cow to the list, along with moose and bear. So there you go. Chris and Siggy, thank you both very much for being here tonight and for your work. Round of applause to Chris and Siggy, everybody. All right, a couple more, and then our featured reader, Ted Burke. Ike Waltz, you're on deck. Please welcome now Martin Parker. Hi, Martin.
Hello again, Rick, and good to see everybody here tonight and to hear about cows, because I grew up around dairy farms. There was a bunch of taking back to Holstein memories there. Got a couple poems here that might come under the heading More Fun with Linguistics. Hope it's not too boring. This first one is called An Ode to the Phoneme. You owe your existence to various points of articulation within the mouth and how they alter the forms of sounds that flee like birds migrating south till randomly finding an inner ear in which to vibrate a tiny drum, relaying signals to the brain that stand out from the background hum and trigger thoughts in response to waves that float invisibly through the air. But linguists may doubt if you really exist unless you form a minimal pair. For a very quick lesson on that, phonemes can sound different in different situations, but if they don't have two words where they appear in the same exact situation, they're not different phones, they're just the same phony. Anyway, this next one is another fun, short one, a bit less technical. This is just called wordplay. And I actually haven't found it when I was resorting my poetry with a note. I wrote it back when I was in college, and unlike a lot of them, it had the exact date and time I wrote it. This was written on 4/10/1986 at 1:15 a.m. Probably when I was trying to get to sleep. Wordplay. A man I met the other day had come with nothing much to say, except that if I went his way, he'd help me in my work and play. I did not know quite what to say. I did not like him anyway. I thought perhaps it was a play on words that man gave me that day. And that's it for me tonight. Thank you very much.
No, I didn't find it boring at all, Martin. And also because I just got Apple's new iPhoneme. So, it's the latest model. It doesn't do anything except correct your linguistics, and it's $3,000, but it felt worth it because it's just the latest thing they're doing. Martin, thank you so much for that, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Round of applause for Martin Parker. On deck, our featured reader, Ted Burke. Please welcome now Ike Waltz. Hello, Ike.
Good evening. When in Rome, meet eminence in opulence. So we flew to Rome to visit the Vatican, whilst Sheila, my wife, was covered in lipstick, eye shades, and expectations. I decided to mock a missionary hiding inside a hooded black robe, walking in beggar sandals, walking for a prayer, begging for a donation, helping my imaginary flock at home. Imposing is St. Peter's, isn't it? Built on top of his holy chair. Magnificence makes you realize how small you truly are. Whatever you see dwarfs you and me, and culture collides with spirituality. Entering the low-ceiling crypt, where the air is humid and thick, shared confinement filled with musky odor, whisper, and awe. Yes, we obey. Some 91 resident sainted popes reign in resting superiority, showered in gold and jewel opulence only power can imagine. That power is to bend your knees, that power that bent my knees. How can I ask for absolution when spiritual value is divinity showered in glitz and glory? I do not dare for that donation, dear Holiness. I apologize. Rest in peace, dear saints. Amen. And then, what heavenly intervention and angelic voice shutters that obedient hush, awe, and whisper. Straight from the Texan Bible Belt, our sister yelled in that familiar slang, "Jack, let's get the hell out of here. This is a religious dump." And Nietzsche said, "And God is dead? God, do you have any sense of humor? So, my God, how are you? What have you actually done? Don't hush me. Don't say I will not pray for it. Oh God, you should be nameless. It's for your many confusing names. Your tactic is to tame us. You invited us into theological doctrines. Little we know what it all means. Color, races, jacks and aces. Be God-fearing and utter the Lord's name and mutter your dues just the same. We are your loyal troops. We are your clones. We compete for your blessing at birth, in success, defeat, and death. You taught us self-destruction, suicide, and you never seemed to die. But everyone else does. Why? Oh God, the Zion, take all your hopes and popes away. No saints, no martyrs, no fighting, no killing, no stories, no lies. That endless ping pong of love and hate, your creative bait. Love, hate, peace, war, love, hate, in glory and defeat. Our destiny, insane, nuclear or artificial intelligence. Do you really enjoy this hawkish game? Your Inquisition and all that canonization, all that genocide. Is this your idea? Or even worse, are you not aware? Created in your image? But we are the sinners? Insane. Imagine you had only one name. Imagine the sinner is you, and we are your loyal pawns. For a universe so prematurely Jurassic old, in God we trust. The greenback rules so bold. Greed ignites temporary need. Yes, we are the needy. God saw it coming, and it all comes in his miraculous way. But we wonder that forever, why? St. Paul dressed in gold and the spectacular, the pinnacle for the blind. Worship so ambiguous, oracular. Yes, God does the rest. P.S. Don't point the finger at me and call me blasphemy. We are not earthen sinners by no means, but searching lovers, yet lousy beginners. As it cannot be that fearing you is your sacred divinity. Dear God, I pray for love in you and so in me. Forever I will believe in the greatness of thee. Vedi Roma e poi muori. See Rome and ask why. Thank you.
Ike, thank you so much, as always, for your thoughtful work and all the work that goes into creating that and bringing it to us. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. A round of applause for Ike Waltz. After our featured reader, we'll have Jimmy Jazz up first, which leads us now to our featured reader, Ted Burke. Ted is someone who has made an impression on me in the last couple of years by his regular, semi-regular appearances here in Cobalt Poets. He's been here a handful of times. He's a San Diego poet, born, as he mentioned earlier, in Detroit, Michigan, and has been in San Diego since the 60s, I think someone said earlier as well. If you remember the 60s, you weren't there, so we'll see what Ted has to say about that. Ted is a bookseller, a freelance music journalist, a musician, a street photographer, basically an artisan of all types. His work has appeared in many different places. He was a finalist in the Steve Cowett Poetry Award contest a couple of years ago, and his poems were taken by Grammy-winning composer Libby Larson to adapt for a trio of songs, which sounds so cool, and what a huge honor and thrill to have your work commingling with another artist's work in that manner. He now writes for the San Diego Troubadour and is the literature and poetry buyer for D.G. Willis Books in La Jolla, California, just outside of San Diego. Ted, I'm really thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much. Oh, and this is really important. Ted says this is the first public reading he's done in 5 years. So Ted, really honored that this is the place that's happening. Please welcome our featured reader, Ted Burke.
Hey, evening, everybody. How is everybody doing tonight? Thank you. Thank you to the poets who read before, some powerful voices and a rich variety of passions coming forth. I'm really privileged to be in your company, as I have been other times that I've been here. So I love open readings. I'm going to read. I'm going to read from poems that go back 40 years and up to the present time. It's a selection from various chapbooks and anthologies I've been privileged to be in, and we'll see how it goes. I just hope I don't lose my voice. If I stammer, if I lose my place, bear in mind, recently I had some eye surgery, so I have some eye issues. That's why I took my glasses off. So let's see how it goes. This is from an anthology, came out in 1983, called Ocean Highway, 8 Poets in San Diego, which also features Kate Watson, Paul Dresman, Peter Dragon, Melanie Nielsen, Shelley White, Don Euler, and Paul Dresman, who is my mentor. I'm going to read one called Fine Print. And it goes... In the right disguise, I thought my voice might rise and ride on the wind with the leaves and smoke. My voice coast to coast, 100,000 watts of solid credentials and a record collection to back 'em up. A voice penetrating every backroom card game, jail cell, quarter to one dishwasher station that would let them know that if you about the ink of the social contract, and that, simply put, if you get rid of the loophole, you've destroyed the noose. That's solipsism, you said, sewing a rip while I adjusted a tie. I mean, we need cops and bosses because people are greedy and the rent comes due and the dinner's at 8. So let's go early and make an impression that would put us in good stead. And I said, you're right, let's be early. And then thought, let's go be with our friends, gathered together on the same thread, hanging like pearls around a long, rich neck. From another anthology called Small Rain, 8 more poets in San Diego, featuring some of the same poets I mentioned before. This is a love poem I wrote for Jill Moon. It was significant. My partner for a good number of years passed away some years ago. But this is a love poem that I wrote when I was proposing to her. She turned me down, but we lived together for 10 years. So from the top of your head, flowers grow that I've seen in the nature of my asking, the meaning of this thing so beautiful, the wind in all uses highlights the shift of your hips, leaning against rocks, the meaning of this, the earth, the mother of the deals that has us eating out of hands, that pick the roots of your hair, that goes on growing like flowers on hills with all the houses we've never lived in. A clap of thunder is applause enough for pausing to smell the turpentine that revives the hymn and haw of the wood under our shoes. Rainy nights are ovations, and the trance of still looking into your eyes where I've always seen them, on pyramids in circles, thirsty yearning. But my hand comes ruined meaning about hammers and nails and the holes that made them. I've stared at your face on the ceiling all night. Water flows where there is no resistance. Insistence makes me forget and remember your names. Every center has a heart, and every heart is broken. Into your face, all roads split down the middle. The wind is a whisper and a rustle of notes. Coyotes cry in the wake of our progress. So beautiful, the wind and water rolling in circles, in peace. I still like that one. This is Language of Joy, written about having lived 25 years in California, separate from Michigan, and all the children are grown up and families go, and we are all adults all of a sudden, and we don't like that. Parents dying, all those other things, and we resent growing up, becoming responsible adults. I wrote this about 10 years after I sobered up in 1987. I have 37 years. It's a little over half my life, and I sobered up at the age of 35. And if I don't drink, 38 years in July. My sobriety date is the day after my birthday. So that was a real convenient way for me to remember, how it is that I'm 37 years beyond the expiration date of my life. And that's a good way to remember that. You don't drink and you got old, and it's a privilege to get old. But this is called Language of Joy, and it goes something like this. Speaking of times and twangs of alien regions which share memories of months and distant smells of dust and oil rising from black asphalt hours before the rains came. California is the vat of raw alloys where grandchildren meet each other in jobs that make no sense, and they compare notes over black, tasteless coffee. About it was their grandparents were saying something about the code that firmed up the backbone and brought a mist to their eyes. We are too many years past the expiration dates of our lives to think of parachutes in autumn by the Pacific Ocean in a city where the best boasts are sand, gunboats, warm air, cool breezes that turn us into a generation of rasping sighs and lawn chairs, nursing drinks under tourist umbrellas in the neighborhoods we moved into 3 decades earlier, in the expectation of making a mark on a locale of palm trees that was unknown as anything we wanted to do with our lives. It's about doom. It's about doom and gloom and rain and love of defeated weather that is a tempest we brave going out the doors of our homes for. It's about being sorry for the rich for being so pathetically well off when integrity is the only thing on the menu. In bars and motels near county fairgrounds, dealing with degrees of English and slants of the camera's eye, it's about the loneliness of standing in the same place long enough to see prodigal sons and daughters come home with news of the war, a sinking feeling that gunboats were not enough, wondering what in the universe makes sense when you're bored beyond despair and philosophy is now a cable channel broadcasting into the clouds until everyone returns from the beach, from the water of laughter, from rivulets that come in many streams, the language of joy. I wrote that when I was really pissed off about something. So, and let's over a chapbook called City in the Dark, which is, I did this in 2009. And this is about a friend of mine named Jake. Jake. I remember those names in capital letters: Bob's, Biff's, Sambo's on the West Coast, lunch counters where I found you asleep over a copy of Aviation Weekly, your head held high by the flat of your palms, bracing your jowls made fleshy with a year's gravity and bad weather, head held high by palms flatter than the streets where you made your living in and outside the laws you had memorized, like phone numbers and street addresses. And then to the sweet dream of Oakland, printer's ink, payments on the car, the baby crying, a wife who wouldn't leave you alone. Jake, where are you now? And where's my $20? This might be the closest thing to a political poem, but it's called A Cradle Mislaid. Neither this day nor that when I might sing or dance three-legged across the floor, hailing the end of the night as another eve of hedge bets. Not even a month of Sundays could cajole easy praise for proper nouns, naming roads that honor killers stitched together with the cheapest ore. The pins won't stick and the alibis won't adhere to St. Peter's beard. Never in the lightest years would I dream denying the truth of a small flower blooming across the street from a 3-car pileup. Irony is cheap when the market bears a grudge. This is one of the poems Libby Larsen adapted to a song trilogy. The song trilogy is now available on, in other places. I won't do a commercial plug here, but it was really interesting to go up to the Aspen Music Festival, having a world-class baritone vocalize my lyrics in some very abstract atonal piano music. This is without the atonal piano music, and it's about my parents growing up in Detroit, where we had Rexall drugstores, and my misgiving about Rexalls was that they didn't have comic books. Rexall. A man in the front seat of a car parked in front of a Rexall Drugs runs his thumb under his suspenders and lets them snap against his pinstripe suit. His son cries the last gasp of a crying jag. That was only for show. The boy's attempt to keep alive the mania and the rage that made him seem powerful in a world where he only came up to other people's waistlines. The father lights an old gold, turns up the radio, smiling as he sunlessly mouths the word Patty Page is singing, dancing in Tennessee, has never sounded so distant and strange an idea to him. He cracks the window, thinking of his wife, who he imagines going up and down the aisles, reading the labels of every cold medicine that she sees. All I want is a comic book, says the son, finding voice at last between gasps for breath. Superman and Brainiac were in a fight on the bizarre world, and I only want to get a comic book. The boy sniffles. The dad crushes the cigarette in the ashtray, looking off in the distance and noticing the color of the leaves and the trees, knowing that the days seem to grow shorter and his work hours get longer. He reaches over and messes his son's hair. Not every comic book sells comics, he says dreamily. Not everything is funny or fun, and sometimes you just have to wait. He coughs, his son pulls away from him and crouches in the corner of the back seat, making sounds to make dad think of a noisy plumbing in the old apartment buildings. He looks up and sees his wife coming from the store, darting between parked cars. He admires the way the wind makes her dress billow just so in the wind when he starts the engine, wondering what is in the bag she carries so carefully with those silly white gloves. And I think this is a recent one that's it's a kind of a mock-up of a book that'll be coming out, I hope sometime soon. I have to get the funding, but there is an HTML5 flip book that's available, and I think we can provide the URL. It's available for download. And this is one of them called A Priest, a Rabbi, a Buddhist Monk. A priest walks into a bar to order a glass of water to douse the flaming tongue dancing over his hairline. The rabbi, already sitting there, adjusts himself on a stool and considers the priest with a jeweler's scrutiny. You gonna drink the water or just pour it over your head, he asks, taking a leisurely sip of his beer. I'm thinking, said the priest. This tongue of flame appeared over my head overnight and woke me up after my pillow caught fire, burned the rectory to the ground. I'd like to pray about this, but I don't know which saint to pray to. Well, that's what I don't like about Western religion, said the Buddhist monk from the other end of the bar. He was drinking a Stroh's and smoking a thick length of cigar, cheesy special effects, and too much bureaucracy. The rabbi nodded. The priest prayed, and the monk bought lunch. A song that was inspired by a John Lennon song of the same title called Across the Universe. Across the Universe. Rocks reside inside a garden made of leaves and snow and glisten in the mist when the rain abates and the sunlight greets the city with a kiss of hints and whispers. to move along and walk and see beyond the street lamps and billboard clutter and witness the sky as it opens over mountains dotted with firs and fog. The night and sighs follow when it's time to rest, means the best of our minutes were spent making each second align to a new poem and not the beginning of a new problem that would exist to nag and complain and present you with gravity beyond your reach that keeps you in the chair and the smeared monitor. We need to walk and talk to someone other than the recorded messages at the end of the customer service phone calls. We need to imagine the world we've seen in magazines of unrepentant daring and color. We need to drop the rocks back in the garden where we found them and let the dirt and leaves do their work. If it seems I haven't prepared, you're absolutely right. A lot of these poems are just a mad grab, but this is kind of interesting. Always. Everyone spends a little time basking in the glow of a black and white television. Who needs moonlight when the Lone Ranger follows Love That Bob and Kukla, Fran, and Ollie will be there in the morning before breakfast, cornflakes and milk, the color of eggshells? Somewhere unspoken, it's always 1964, 16 ounces of pop that was 14 cents. Rain and sleet cover the roads like sad sheets on an old bed. Schoolgirls wore shapeless sweaters and skirts with creases and with creased pleats sharp enough to cut a steak. This one is called Iron Man. I was thinking of Eric Dolphy, not Marvel Comics. If you know, that was one of Eric Dolphy's great jazz albums. Iron Man, against all odds, I iron the clothes before she gets home. Every pleat is neat and curt, and the shape and the sharpness of its line. Pants so crisp they stand by themselves, like the half of me that wants to leave before anything is done growing. Every blouse is arranged on a hanger with the care of decorators descending on a cake. Skirts feel the heat and conform to the warm and persuasive alignment of lines in confinement of a mess that only ruins the lines of a dress, as it might catch fire and cause damaged knees in the business district of men not watching where they're going as you pass by, going to a meeting, clean cut and curving, and the suits my iron took upon your seams. That's what I mean. Shirts that press could be made to fly with just the right number of well-placed folds. My ironing is streamlined, efficient, aeronautically superb. Fly me to the moon. I am an engineer of straight lines, new kinds of symmetry. I am so good that it is a pity to get undressed at night. At the end of the day, when everything pressed comes into play, shall we practice sleeping standing up, fully clothed? How am I doing on time, Rick?
You're right at the end there, so I'd do your closer if you got one or two more that you wanted to make sure to get in.
Let's try these two, and then I'll be quiet, and I look forward to listening to everybody else. Apples are tasty when they're crisp, like packs of ice, held to the brow, sweet like kisses that cannot let you retire for the night, crunchy as box springs sounding a symphony of metal and moans under pitch ceiling cedar. Apples are good when you set them next to vases full of dead flowers by a window, awarding with rooftops and satellite dishes, a city buzzed and ablaze with lights that make the night electric with expectation. Insane signs broadcasting slogans upside down and backwards on streets where it rained while we ate. Apples are red with rage and nearly purple with a lust that leads you to think of what else you grow when weather forbids. something impervious to drought, or the most splayed over tilled soil. No apples for this plain, no roots for this plot. It's a rock garden, and nothing grows but the length of the weight it takes for gravity to invent itself all over again. And one more, and this is for my my niece when she was growing up. About 6 years old, liked to sing, and her singing was terrible, and I loved every minute of it. I loved every misconstrued, misheard lyric. It was just a beautiful thing to watch at family reunions. Bella sings. There are years between the cushions. There are years between the cushions, solar systems floundering amid the cracks, many miles to the stairs and the continent of treetops where you see just beyond the sharpest point of the pitched roof. I am driving the roads of my mind again, spinning my wheels in metaphors that are now cold, lifeless mud, twigs and tropes and simple turns of phrase that do not appear on maps I didn't refold. Fool me again, attack me in the back alley of restaurant smells. What are you looking for? Said Bella, as eyes and smile dancing together in swirling motions of 5-year-old joy. Do you want to hear me sing a song I just made up? The shirt still itches, starch and coarse seams. Dinner smells good, even to the abstract appetite. Bella's voice finds the words that don't exist, and they will fill the room with what she seems to love. A house full of people, like family and strangers, bearing food and kisses on the cheek. The doorbell always ringing, an audience all her own, and everyone knows her name. Thank you.
Well, Ted, I think you've successfully gotten back into the world of live poetry readings without any injury or ill effects. So, looks like you still got it, man. So well done. I really enjoyed that. A lot of great lines in what you're at. A privilege to get old. I laughed out loud, at the one that ended. And where's my $20? That was a lot of fun. Really nice set of poems there. I love your voice. You've got you should be a millionaire doing voiceovers of some kind. I think I have no ability to make that happen. I just want it to happen. So if you make it happen, I will listen to whatever documentary you narrate. Just let me know when that comes about. Let me share the broadside I made for the poem that you sent me. Click on, actually I'm going to paste the stuff in the chat first and then share the screen. There it is. There's the broadside for your poem, Sadder Than Guesswork. Folks can download this now if they would like at the Cobalt Poets website. I pasted the link in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, well, it occurred to me I guess I need to paste it there too. I didn't do that yet, but I will do that. But you folks in the chat, you can click right there and see this on the Cobalt Poets website. This is how we compensate our poets. I hope you'll consider, quote, purchasing one of these, even though you can just download it for free and look at it anytime you want and print it out if you want. But this is how we tip our featured poets. I put Ted's PayPal email in the chat, and if you send Ted a tip, that's the virtual passing of the hat that you might see at an in-person reading. So please consider doing that if that's the kind of thing you'd do if you were at a live in-person reading. Also pasted in the chat, there's a link to one of Ted's presences on the web, ted-burke.com, so you can keep in touch with him and see what he's thinking about there on that blog and other, which has links to other places as well. And finally, I also pasted a link to Ted's flip book of poems, the HTML book he mentioned earlier, so you have that there as well. So there you go. Ted, thank you again for your reading. It was great to have your voice. I know you've been here several times before. I hope you'll come several more times and continue to come in when it's convenient for you. We'd love to hear more work from you, and I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Be honored, and thank you for asking, and thank you everybody for coming tonight.
All right, round of applause for our featured reader, Ted Burke. Thank you so much, Ted. I will mention Next week, our featured reader is our own regular Debbie Siegel. She will be here next week, and you can see who else is reading in the coming weeks by heading up over to the Cobalt Poets website and clicking on the calendar link. That having been said, we're ready for the rest of tonight's open reading. Here's who I have: Jimmy Jazz, Jeff Betker, Michael G. Hickey, Denise Dumar, Julian Matthews, Ken Scott, Dig, Wayne, and me. If I missed anyone and you'd like to read, just send me a message in the chat and I'll be happy to add you. As always, 2 poems maximum. Less is more is the suggested time limit. And there you go. So on deck is Jeff Betker. Please welcome now, also from San Diego, Jimmy Jazz. Hi, Jimmy.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I worked with Ted at the UCSD bookstore a few years ago, and he taught me one of our jobs at the bookstore was to find some books that have been on the shelves for a while and send them back to the publisher to get credit. And Ted taught me, like, well, if it's a book you like, just hide it somewhere in the store so we can't send it back. And then on the list there, it was my book was the book to send back. So it's probably still hidden in the store somewhere. This is the first chapbook that Ted read from. Here's a picture of Ted. I don't know if you can see. Look at this great tie and jacket, looking so sharp there. Yes, very good. Okay. All right. I'm just going to read one poem here. It's called Elegy for Jim. A screaming came across the sky on Broadway 2 hours after sunrise. A black crow darted before the cityscape, a small hawk in pursuit of his tail feathers, reminding me, strangely, of conversations in a teacher's lounge at a language school in San Diego with our friend Jim Ricker. Jim, hippie Jim, parsing the spoken words of his interlocutors, asking each to think and rethink before speaking. The talons of his sharp logic clipping some who dared use anecdotal evidence to support a claim. Hippie Jim, there was a fry cook in your heart and a prescriptive grammar suit. A fry cook flipping hotcakes in a Sunday rush at the big kitchen. Hippie Jim with your master's degree, where is your long hair now? A fry cook who never minced words and a usage cop with an etymologist nightstick upside the head of the greengrocer. Who does he think he is with his 10 items or less sign? Hippie Jim, you old polemicist, you coot, never angry but always ready and able to argue everything. Hippie Jim with your long hair, were you a Marxist? Can you explain Marx's labor theory of value one more time? You old union man, you wobbly, you uber hater. We'll kick hell out of any scab that crosses your picket line. Hippie Jim, why were you shaking your fist at the lack of common sense in the Ottoman Empire over coffee with the muse? Your cantankerous, misanthropic curmudgeon mask didn't fool the people you loved. A circus tent couldn't mask a heart like that. Hippie Jim, will they bury you in bolo tie and seersucker coat? Will your hair belong in heaven? Will you give Jesus a piece of your mind? Will God pour you a beer and with a slap on the back say, good job, buddy? Hippie Jim, you could be sober 1,000 years or 1,000 lonely nights, and all your courage and conviction wouldn't stop us finger waggers from waving your final vices like a red flag. Did you really eat a 7-Eleven chili dog and chocolate milk every fucking day? Any man who can find joy in the grit in the bottom of a styrofoam cup of Folgers can be happy in this world. Oh, secret joy, teacher, ask your students to seize the day. Tap your enthusiasm in class and field trips to places they have never been. Jim, hippie Jim, you teacher, you reader, Who will speak at length about the great writers of our time? Who will follow Pynchon and Bill Volman? Who will read Edward Abbey's FBI file and care about David Foster Wallace? Who will throw his bodies on the gears of the capitalist machine and wonder in what desert Edward Abbey lies? Jim, you teacher, you reader, you study hard, you knower of so many things. History dies with a man like you. History falls into the memory hole. Jim, you knower, you carer, you talker. Your hawk soars above the tower. The crow counts his days. Thank you.
Great, Jimmy. Nice to see you again. Nice to hear you again. I know sometimes you're here a lot and just watching, which is always appreciated. But glad to hear your voice. And I know you're a San Diego person too, and it's cool that you're here supporting Ted. And it was great to hear you as well, and great to learn of your long-time connection with him. And thank you for showing us that old picture of Ted. That's a bonus for all of us. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yes.
Round of applause for Jimmy Jazz. On deck, Michael G. Hickey. Please welcome now Jeff Betker. Hi, Jeff.
Good evening, everybody. So I am the third of the San Diego hat trick here. Quick announcement, I have one short poem. April 6th in Chula Vista, if you happen to be there, I'm putting on an event called Poetry Across Languages, and I'm having poets read their poem in English and then in the original language. So I've got Spanish, French, Japanese, Chinese, etc. So it's going to be a fun day. One of the best things that happened to me in my youth was getting to go to Montreal and hearing the French and seeing the architecture and just feeling the vibe was amazing. So this poem's called "O Canada, How I Will Miss Your Friendship, Trips to Montreal, the Vancouver Bay, no longer to be. Banff and Jasper, Toronto and Quebec City, I already miss thee. But above all, I will miss your smiles, your relaxed attitude. Canucks and Francophones, at least hear my plea. Can we please borrow Mike Myers and Geddy Lee?" Thank you.
Fun poem. I had a good experience in Montreal. My wife and I got to go there early on when our kid was born. We used to take longer, exciting vacations to all kinds of places. We started doing that again, actually. But when he was really young, we could fly to Allentown, Pennsylvania, where his grandparents live, and leave him there, and then go somewhere kind of within striking distance. And driving to Montreal was like, I think, the first trip we went on, because it was sort of like going to Europe without actually, flying anywhere. So yeah, we had a good time there. Glad you had a good time there, and thank you so much for being here. That reading sounds really cool, the languages event. So hope that comes off really well.
Thank you so much.
All right, round of applause for Jeff Betker. On deck, Denise Dumar. Please welcome Michael G. Hickey. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Rick. Hi, everyone. Ted, great feature. I've got two poems. These are poems that will be coming out in my new book, Orgy at the Chinchilla Ranch. And the first poem is called The Boy in Third Grade. Telephone rings in the middle of my chicken noodle soup. I'm not selling anything, sir, the man says. Would you mind answering a few survey questions? It'll only take a few minutes. Okay. What do you do for a living? I'm a poet. The anonymous interviewer chuckles. No, seriously, sir, what's your occupation? Part two. Later, I ponder the origin of this pursuit that strokes the mirth of inquisitive strangers, and I keep going back to the boy in third grade, Greg, with the green shirt, who made Mrs. Denzer blush. We were all in love with her, staying after school to clean erasers, lower shades, pilfer whiffs of her perfume. She taught us about poems, why she liked them, why we should too. Her eyes green as Greg's shirt. At the end of class, everyone wrote one. Greg read his, and her cheeks transformed into American Beauty roses, her eyes filled with wet adrenaline. the fat smile on Greg's face and my envy like a hemorrhage in the sweet, moist air. She said he had written the most beautiful poem she ever heard, and I still remember the first line, "A dress walked by with a woman inside." The second poem is called Unsolicited Material, Part 1. Sorry about that. Unsolicited Material. May I speak to Mike Hickey, please? This is he. Hi, this is Connie from Good Samaritan Hospital. You were in last week for a physical examination. Is that correct, sir? That's right. Dr. Morris asked you to send a stool sample. Have you had a chance to do that yet, sir? Yes, I did. Are you sure? Believe me, Connie, I would remember dropping a turd in the toilet and fishing it out with a plastic bag. I mailed it in a large manila envelope. Part 2. That night under the coffee table, I find a large manila envelope addressed to Good Samaritan Hospital containing a self-addressed stamped envelope, short biography, 5 perfectly typed laser printed poems on thick paper, white as starch colored, and a brief cover letter. Attention, poetry editor, the New Yorker magazine. I've enclosed the following for your consideration. I was mortified, naturally, when I figured it all out and didn't bother to send the New Yorker any further samples of my unsolicited material. 6 months later, however, I returned home from work one day to find a large manila envelope wedged in the mailbox, and sure enough, the magazine has returned my bag of fossilized feces with a curt form letter, quote, "We regret that we are unable to use the enclosed material, but thank you for giving us the opportunity to consider it." The editors, thank you.
Who's to say what a poem is? You know what I'm saying, Michael? I mean, that's it's a shame they didn't take any of those pieces, as it were. Funny. Enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed your whole book a lot. I'm going to just tell everyone a secret that I got to read it in advance, so it's a lot of fun, and it's going to be great when it comes out, so I hope that's soon. Good luck with it, and thank you so much for being here and sharing that shitty experience with us.
Thank you, Rick.
Round of applause for Michael G. Hickey on deck. Julian Matthews, please welcome now Denise Dumar. Hello, Denise. Dumars.
All of that, really? Oh, that was awesome. Okay, a serious one tonight for a change. It's called Live and Don't Die, and that's a quote from Omar Hamad. The bombs aren't here just yet. In the dim past that I remember, they almost were here. Black and subtle wishes, drunken schemes, the view from beneath the tin desk. In those days, paper tigers. In those days, threatened missiles. Every day, nearly the last, the penultimate, the dichondra growing over crabgrass dreams, suburban nightmares, harvest gold and avocado green. In those days, nobody would see a future made of everyday evil. Every shoe banging on a table, forgotten behind facelifts and fragile peach foundation. It all looked so black and white and green and red all over. In those days, you could have knocked me over with a feather. So much easier to fear when fear was half a world away. As Ray Bradbury would say, always someone else's husband dying in the war. Stay alive, don't die, resist, don't get tired. If you call it genocide, they'll deport you. Inside night's evil sight, truth's light draws the predators, basking at the watering hole, Kentucky bourbon. In those days, we ate the lies with Jell-O salads and cream chip beef on toast. Now all they feed us are mood elevators to convince us that there's something wrong with being not okay with genocide. not okay. But live, don't die, remember. Thank you.
Denise, thank you. I don't know. This probably wasn't the focus of your poem, but the mood elevators. I immediately went into, oh, you get inside one of those, and you know, something happens inside which elevates your mood. Besides getting to a new floor, probably not what you had in mind, but there you go. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Thank you for being here. Looking forward to your featured reading in May, coming up soon, soonish, I guess. Thanks for being here tonight. Round of applause for Denise Dumars. Am I pronouncing that correctly finally after all these many years? Okay. We've added the Z. No extra charge, ladies and gentlemen. On deck, Ken Scott. Please welcome now Julian Matthews.
Hi. So in line with the Z, yes, the first one called Stung. Stung. The barista did not spell my name right again. I harump and cradle the coffee like a grenade to my favorite corner seat, but it's taken. Double harump. I trudge to a window seat as if it's the last one on a delayed flight, my pre-coffee grumpiness steaming from my ears, my patience running out like a lit fuse. Settling into my seat, I notice the swan in my coffee is less placid latte art, but something beastly, grotesque, its wing deformed, contorted, its head hydra-like, a hooded cobra about to strike. My day barely begun. I already feel stung. And the second one is called The Last Bee. At sunrise in our garden, the shrubbery is speckled with bejeweled dew, flowers like hungry beaks open to greet Mother Sun, and I'm pottering about with a trowel when the sounds of a bee buzzing in and out of the wild pink and purple hyacinths growing at the untrimmed hedge catches my post-coffee attention. Mr. Google says a single bee produces 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in its entire short lifetime. That's a dozen hard-working foragers who sacrificed their lives for a single teaspoon that went into my cereal this morning. A new scientist story says the average honeybee lives only 18 days these days, down from 34 days, almost a 50% fall over the past 5 decades. Another article speculates how bees may go extinct by 2050. I see the bee before me has not read the signs. Nor does she care. Busy is as busy does. Tiny pollen sticks to her head, torso, legs like waxy beads as she flits away. She'll visit an average of 1,000 flowers today alone, pollinating thousands more in those last days of her life. I go over your excuses now, your rebuffs, your last replies. I'm busy, when the usual refrain. Or maybe next week, until all the maybes evaporated into the ether, the messaging stopped, and the screen went dark forever. I reminisce in this beautiful garden which grew, with the heat rising, the bees now disappearing from view, these emptied flowers, and everything I remember of you, all the forage memories, falling off leaves like the last drips of dew as I turn towards our living hive, its dead queen, and the sting of another ugly cry. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Great dive into the world of bees there. I didn't know bees lived such a short life. I wonder how long their queens live. We need to find that out and see what's going on with that civilization there, so we have all the information. Thank you so much for being here, Julian. Thank you for those poems. On deck, round of applause for Julian Matthews. On deck, Dig Wayne. Please welcome now Ken Scott. Hi, Ken.
Good evening, everyone. Just two pieces, not so long. I wrote these a while ago, though, back in 2011. This first piece is called A Loneliness So Deep. There's a loneliness so deep you could drop a pin into it and never hear the echo of that pin hitting the bottom of it. You struggle to trace it to its root. Was it something I did long ago? Was it something I said? Or was it because I was simply born? But it skillfully evades all methods of reasoning, understanding, observation, analysis, only rearing its ugly, misshapen head in the aftermath of yet another friend who heinously betrayed you, yet another lover who callously took your gentleness for weakness, yet another job lost, yet another venture crashed, and yet another shattering of your weary heart, with you struggling to piece it back together again in abject loneliness, already having lost count of all the times you prayed for the misery to end. Loneliness is always misshapen with tears of sorrow, because it constantly longs for a companion, yearns for a friend, begs for true love, but is never fulfilled. On the other hand, are any selfish ways really worth the sorrows, the anxiety, the loneliness? How long will you keep giving away your peace, your sanctity, your truth, in order to have it all? What good is worldly success when the price you've paid is a weary heart shattered so many times that can no longer be pieced together again? That's that one. And this next one is called Remember the Poetry. There was a time when you never once criticized the words that flowed from your pen or from your tongue. Instead, you counted it all joy to be able to express yourself so freely, regardless of the expression that came forth. Remember those moments, and in cherishing them, be inspired to create new ones. Expression is therapy, healing. Even if the listening ear only consists of the open page that receives and faithfully displays your written words, never hold anything in, especially not expressions that need to be released. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Ken, thank you. Nice work as always. Thank you so much for being here. Round of applause for Ken Scott. Thank you, Ken. On deck is me to close out the open reading. Please welcome now Dig Wayne. Hello, Dig.
Hello, Rick. Hello, everybody. Of thee I swing. Don't talk to me about jazz when Zhizh is playing hooky with ball peens. This conversation is turning me into a wall. Hang a painting on me before I go blind. Don't bring up your father's mustache if it ain't keeping up with righteous wigwams. Dig it, Jackson, like the moon came out just for you. Cash in your polka dots for a big boy bike. Pedal around the flats and sharps in Wonderland. Scat up a catastrophe so all the dancers land on soft Muldoons. Let the schlep ring true. Only 12 more shopping days until we can tune up the knell. Ring-a-ding-ding, baby pop. It's hard to beat on the drums when they're trying to beat on you and you and you, but not you. So don't talk to me about zhizh when jazz is in bed with your heart. I just wrote that today. This one, it's called The Day I Learned to Fly. It began with throwing my iPhone out of the window of my car as I drove on the 405 freeway. In the rearview mirror, I could see it skipping on the concrete like a stone over a pond until a pink Cybertruck crushed it. I stopped my car in the middle of the fast lane, got out, stood on the road. No one blew their horns or shouted at me, accusing me of having sex with someone's mother. As all the cars screeched to a halt, a massive 18-wheeler carrying Little Debbie cakes and pies slowly came to a rest an inch from me. The driver got out and opened the back of the trailer. She was an elderly Native American woman who proceeded to toss out the sugary inventory to the stopped drivers. No one spoke. They all just ate the cakes and pies. She then, right before my eyes, turned into an eagle and flew away. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the pink Cybertruck appeared and struck me from behind, sending me airborne. I could feel both my legs and my neck were broken, but it didn't matter. I gained altitude. With my arms outstretched, I rose above the mountain's dry chaparral which flanked the scarred freeway. The sun was in my eyes, but I could just make out the Teamster Eagle ahead of me. I followed her west toward the ocean. I could fly. I could really fly. The smell of the Pacific filled my nostrils. I basked in the clean yellow sunshine, healing my soul, my broken bones, my heart, reconnecting me to humanity. As we flew, I dared to look the new bird in the eye. I saw my own reflection, but it was me, asleep behind the wheel of my speeding car. I was careening toward a dump truck full of diamonds. Just as I was about to rear-end it, the eagle screamed and I woke up. I rolled over and fell out of bed. My sweet tooth was on fire. By the way, thanks, Ted. Thanks for your feature.
So, based on what you said, do you recommend seeking out the experience of getting run over or hit by a pink Cybertruck?
Well, it's probably about the worst vehicle you could get hit by, isn't it? I would say.
It'd probably be worth ranking them, I guess. Which ones are better to be hit by? But it just seems like you got to fly, and it was, you got to do a lot of stuff as a result of it.
Yeah, but it was all bullshit in the end. I was just asleep.
I hadn't considered that part when you yanked me out of the experience by waking up with your sweet tooth on fire. But okay, fine. That's how it is.
I think, Rick, living in LA, you get the worst of the Cybertrucks because you get all these crazy people, painting them pink and, camouflage. And, it's just like, oh, please. Here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I think every Cybertruck is the worst of the Cybertruck, but I agree. You can always up the ante on those just by applying a look.
Yeah, a wrap. It's like, oh, God.
I'm afraid of them. They seem so sharp on the edges. I don't want to accidentally touch one and it slices off one of my fingers.
Well, they're evil. They're evil vehicles, man. They reek of the apocalypse.
All right. Ken Scott's really into this, I see. All right, cool. Dig, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate the work. Good stuff tonight. Round of applause for Dig Wayne. I'm going to close out the open reading with a couple of poems. This one is from my book. It's Spritz O'Clock Somewhere, which it is. Only so much more of this book I get to read to you before my Alaska book comes out. I'm editing that as we speak. Not as we speak. Maybe because I'm doing this right now, but in this era that we're living in, I'm working on that one. This poem was written in the city of Florence. It's called The Empire is Mine. 1. I found a secret doorway at the hotel that goes all the way back to Julius Caesar. 2. I don't speak much Italian, so odds are this sign is not translated to creative talking fish. 3. Give me wine from a hole or give me death. 4. Now Addie is telling me to use my inside voice a whole lot more than she did before. All right, there's that one. You can buy wine out of a hole in Florence, in case you didn't know that. Goes back to the days of the pandemic, which then further goes back to the days of the plague. Ask me about that if you're interested. This poem was written after this week's Torah portion. It follows this line of text. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of God filled the tabernacle. The poem is called Smoky Presence. I bought a cocktail smoker recently. It is a pleasure to drink unadulterated whiskey, and a different pleasure to have one infused with the smoke of acacia wood, or more likely oak. You place the smoker over the glass, fill its basket with bits of holy wood, light it, and then place its cover so the smoke seeps below into the glass and your whiskey becomes something else. It's like a little tabernacle where the whiskey is the holy of holies and the smoke is the glory of God. While the smoke is present, I can do nothing but wait, like the Israelites did when that cloud was present. When the smoke clears, I can continue on this journey like they continued on theirs until they reached our promised land at the end of 3 books from now. There is a whole presence I swish on my tongue. It takes me to a place where sometimes I want to be, where it is Purim again, and I remember how easy it is to be somewhere I shouldn't. Ever since the desert, I've been looking for smoke and fire. I need that direction if I am to be strong and strengthened. There you go. I forgot to tell you this important little bit of trivia that would explain that last line. I know this is going to be fascinating to all of you. There's 5 books in the Torah, and what the tradition says that when you finish one, you're supposed to say a little blessing that includes, may we be strong and strengthened, basically. So this text I was responding to was in the last section of the book of Exodus. We start the book of Numbers next week. There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. I also want to especially thank Ted Burke for his featured reading and for being with us. There's the stuff in the chat room again. Please consider tipping Ted for his reading at the PayPal ID that's there. Please consider downloading the broadside for Ted's poem at the next link, which you'll see that I just pasted into the chat on the Cobalt Poets website. Of course, you can also check on the calendar to see who's coming up. Our own regular Debbie Siegel will be here next week, and we're scheduled, I think, all the way through the beginning of June at this point. So check out who's coming up there. If you're not already on our email list, you can add yourself to it by clicking on email list at this website. Finally, 2 other TED links. There's a link to Ted's website, ted-burke.com, and you can download Ted's flip book of poems at the link that is pasted there. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. Great night. Great to have you all here. Going to click on the Ask All to Unmute button, so feel free to say hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
And good night, because I got to go to bed.
Hello from tomorrow.
Auf Wiedersehen.
All righty, y'all.
Ted, that was terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was
Sad
an
to say.
excellent feature, too.
Yeah,
I
good stuff,
downloaded
Ted.
your flip
Great
book
feature.
thinking that it was a pop-up book. I got them mixed up, and I'm like, how does this do a pop-up? But you know, that might be the next step for poets. I mean, if we got to get somebody to buy our books, they should be pop-up books.
Yeah.
Ted,
Yeah.
who did you,
Or
Ted, who
flip
did
up.
you say was your
I'm-
mentor in this book? I did.
Who would like to hear a harmonica solo?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not coming through.
It's not working.
There's a feature, a feature on Zoom, Ted, called Original Sound for Musicians, and if that is off, it mutes all sound that isn't talking to get
Zoom
rid of
hates
background
harmonica.
noise. So you have to click that at the top of the window, and then we'll be able to hear
I
your
think he was doing a
unadulterated
John
sound.
Cage solo.
Yeah, there you go. How many minutes was that again?
We didn't hear it, Ted.
You didn't hear it.
No. No, Rick, so there's some.
Yeah, Ted, there's
There's a button you gotta click.
Listen to
There's a
Rick.
link at the top of the Zoom window called Original Sound for Musicians, and if that is off, it suppresses any what it considers to be background sounds. If it's on,